Hello, this is Benjamin Price reporting for Kids First, and today I'll be interviewing Maxwell Jenkins, who plays Will Robinson, and Zach Estrin, the showrunner of Lost in Space, which is now going into its second season. So let's get started. What appealed to you about bringing the Lost in Space series, sort of revitalizing it and bringing it to modern-day audiences?
I think that the Robinsons at their core are a real aspirational family, and so much of this story is about hope. And I think that, kind of in this time right now, I think it's a really great time to feel a little hopeful, to see people who are working through their problems together with their hearts and their minds, and hopefully being a little bit inspiring. I think it's a nice time to have the Robinsons back in the world.
Absolutely. So, Mr. Jenkins, you've had lots of touching scenes with the robot. I'm curious, how do you make those emotional scenes feel like authentic when like nothing's really there?
I mean, the robot, he was in the beginning it was very tricky to figure out the dynamic, but something that I realized is that he's really like my two rescued pit bulls at home. He's intensely loyal. He's super kind and super intelligent, but he may have a bad reputation and he may look scary on the outside. But working off that, it really just felt like acting with my two best friends.
Mr. Estrin, what was your favorite aspect of creating this show?
Well, I was fortunate to have two wonderful partners, Matt Sazama and Burk Sharpless, who wrote the pilot of the show and helped bring it out of the original. From 1965, the original show of Lost in Space was very different tonally.
Yeah.
And so for me, I have two daughters. One's 13 and one is 15, and there aren't a lot of shows that are made for them that aren't either talking down to them, or maybe it's maybe a little bit too aggressive or mean-spirited. There's very few shows that we can actually watch together, and so for me, making a show that I know, sitting with my kids, that we're like each going to enjoy for different reasons, was really inspiring to me. And when I was telling them the idea of what the show was, trying to decide, do I want to do this show? Do I not want to do this show? Seeing them light up at the idea of, wait, so like, what would happen if our family was in space? How would we survive? What would happen? They'd be like, Dad, I don't think you'd make it, to be honest. And they were very, very right. But it's really cool. When we were at Comic-Con recently, the number of people who came up to Max and to other people in the cast and saying, thank you so much for this show, because it gave me something to watch with my kids. Usually it's like they're off in their room watching their thing, we're watching our thing, because there's not something that we can really all love together, and this show has given them that.
So family is really at the forefront of this show. So how do you develop a dynamic with your on-screen family, and how did you pick it back up after the hiatus between seasons?
Well, it was really the kind of family dynamic was really in the writing, and working with Molly and with the kids. I mean, they're just such great people to work with, such great actors. It shaped up pretty quickly. I think that's right, wasn't it? I mean, I like
the part where you complimented the writing. That was, and then I didn't really listen much after that.
I'm only doing it because you're sitting next to me.
I figured as much.
We have a really great cast, and I know people say this a lot, but we really do love each other and have a good dynamic together. So it's quite silly and fun, even though we're sort of constantly in these situations where we could die trying to save your kids.
So, Miss Parker, you've been a part of several really strong television ensembles: Deadwood, House of Cards, and now Lost in Space. How did your Lost in Space experience differ from your time on those TV shows?
Well, I mean, one of the main things is that this show is something that my son can watch. I have a 13-year-old, and him and his friends can watch it. So, a lot of the other stuff that I've done is much more adult, and this show works for kids and for grown-ups. And so that part's been really, really wonderful. I know for Toby too, because he's got 3 kids. and they're all different. You know,
Yeah.
everything you do, sort of, it depends on the people and the writing, but this one it's hard work and really fun.
Cool. Mr. Stevens, how do you think your theatrical training prepared you for emoting from inside a spacesuit and things like interacting with CGI characters?
Do you know, it didn't prepare me for that at all. And it's one of the I think my drama school they need a course in spacesuit work. No, but I love the fact that I've always loved sci-fi movies, TV series. I'm a huge fan of the genre, and I never saw myself doing sci-fi, so it is actually really great for me to be involved in a sci-fi show. It's amazing how quickly you get used to it, though, and how complacent you can become. You know, Molly and I just spend our lives on set complaining about being in spacesuits, don't we? whereas I remember in the first season, particularly, Max was always like going, "This is so awesome! I'm in a spacesuit," and he wouldn't take it off, and we were like these bitter adults going, "This is a nightmare. I didn't sign up for this kind of. Why do we do it to ourselves?"
The ending of season 1 saw the Robinson clan in quite a predicament. Going into the next season, how much do you both know about your individual arcs the next season and where you guys will end up?
Ooh, well, we know what happens in the season because we've shot it. But the arcs themselves, I guess I'll speak for Penny. She is going through that kind of angsty teen phase of her life. When you meet the Robinsons and Don West and Dr. Smith, it's 7 months after the last point of season 1. And so there's a point of struggling to find independence, but always being treated like a kid. And her arc isn't necessarily linear like a good teenager. She's a little bit up and down. But yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
Cool.
Hello, Ignacio Serricchio from... Oh, I'm sorry. My arc is more about embracing this family and trying to figure out what these people mean to him now that he's stuck with them. Starting to kind of get to know them a little bit more, maybe be the uncle who visits once a year. Hopefully make it a little bit longer, but we'll see, but still keeping a little bit of a distance. And yes, that's all I have to say about that. Do you have an arc? You don't have an arc.
No, I write the arc, so I'll do those sorts of.
There you go. Thank you, Burk.
Miss Sundwall, what's one quality of Penny or personality trait that you most relate to?
Ooh, I think that Penny is ever so slightly younger than I am. And there's a point to where she is smarter than she gives herself credit for, and she doesn't acknowledge her strengths all the time. She is a people person, and she's very good at understanding people, sometimes better than they understand themselves. So she can, for example, go head-to-head with a very strong person and win, but then she won't give herself credit for that, and she'll be mad because she's not science-oriented like her family. And I think that I was a lot like that for a while.
Mr. Sharpless, how do you find a balance between like intense moments of sci-fi intrigue and these like really heartfelt moments with the Robinson family?
I think that what we try to do is to have. It's funny. It's sort of like a Pixar movie where you have these stories with a lot of movement and a lot of intensity and a lot of fun and hopefully a little bit scary.
Yeah.
And they're actually teaching you kind of like an emotional lesson as you go. Not like we're teaching you, but you're going on an emotional journey that has a point.
Your character, Don West, has a sidekick and a chicken named Debbie. So I'm curious, what was it like working with Debbie on set?
The absolute best. I love animals, and this chicken is really, really well trained. Really well trained. Yep. And
she did ask for a raise, though.
Bigger trailer. It's something I had never done before. I've never acted with an animal for so long, and it took, I don't know, it just took acting to another level. It was it freed me up more for some reason, and yeah, it was so interesting the way I would interact with the chicken compared to the way I would interact with the other characters.
Tell them,
Tell them
your funniest Debbie story. There must be one.
Yes, oh yeah. So it actually made the pilot.
Yeah.
The pilot episode 1 of this season.
Yeah.
There's a scene where I'm reading Penny's journal.
Oh yeah.
And I'm drinking whiskey. That day, the little water cup that the actual chicken, the handlers have for her, it had spilled on the way to the set. And they rushed her to the scene, and she was thirsty for real. Nobody knew this. So I would drink the whiskey, and then the minute I would put it down, she would go in, because the whiskey was water with food coloring. So she would drink it. Yeah, so I'd take it down, and she would just start drinking it. And I'm like, oh, this is amazing. This is incredible, because every time I put it down, I would say, hey, she wrote more about you than me. She would go, because she was actually thirsty in real life. And it made the cut, which is amazing. And I hope PETA doesn't get mad at it. It's water. She was drinking water. Yeah, so that was an incredible moment.
Well, thank you so much for the interview. Make sure to check out Lost in Space Season 2. It debuts on Netflix on Christmas Eve. This is Benjamin Price reporting for Kids First, signing off. See you next time. Bye.
Bye, kids.
Bye.
Do we really have to do this?